London 2013. A crowded room holds its breath as a single burger is cooked. The price tag, $330,000. It was the world's first lab-grown hamburger. Scientists promised that within 5 years, this exact meal would be in your supermarket for $5. But look around. It's been over a decade. Where is the meat? The shelves are empty, and the revolution is late. We were promised a sci-fi future of guilt-free steak. Instead, we got a biology lesson that's proving harder than anyone imagined. Because behind the flashy headlines and massive investments, there was a dirty secret. A dependency on a specific, controversial ingredient. An ingredient that made cruelty-free meat actually requires more cruelty than ever before. This is the story of the blood problem. But first, we have to understand the sheer scale of what we are trying to replace. Humans eat a staggering amount of animals. Livestock uses nearly 80% of global agricultural land. We are literally running out of planet to grow food on. By 2050, we'll have 10 billion mouths to feed. If we do it the old way, the climate math simply doesn't work. We need a new system. One that divorces meat production from the animal itself. It sounds perfect on paper. So why, after billions of dollars in venture capital, are we still struggling to make a single chicken nugget that's profitable? To answer that, we have to zoom in, way in, to the cellular level. Welcome to the world of tissue engineering. Growing meat is actually simple. You take a biopsy from an animal, size of a sesame seed, and put it in a tank. You give it warmth, you give it oxygen, and most importantly, you give it food. This is where the nightmare begins. In a living cow, the blood delivers nutrients. It's a perfect, self-regulating delivery system refined by millions of years of evolution. In a steel tank, there is no heart. There is no liver. You have to manually replicate the complexity of blood. Early scientists found that cells wouldn't grow in just sugar water. They needed a magic sauce to trigger division. They tried synthetic blends. They tried mushroom extracts. Nothing worked as well as the real thing. So, the industry quietly adopted a standard solution, a byproduct of the dairy industry that was rich in growth factors. They called it FBS, fetal bovine serum. And yes, it comes exactly from where the name suggests. To harvest it, you need a pregnant cow sent to slaughter. The fetus is removed, and the blood is drawn from its beating heart. It is incredibly potent. It is the gold standard of cell culture. It is also ethically horrific. This was the paradox. To make meat without killing animals, we had to kill unborn animals to start the process. And the cost? Astronomical. 1 liter of high-quality FBS can cost over $1,000. Imagine trying to sell a burger for $5 when the cooking oil costs $1,000 per liter. The math was broken. Startups knew this. They hid it. They claimed they would phase it out soon, but soon turned into years. In 2017, 2018, 2019, almost every major tasting event still used serum. The media ate the burgers, but they didn't ask about the broth. This was the valley of death. Investors started asking hard questions. If you can't ditch the serum, you don't have a business. Enter the chemists. Not the biologists, the chemists. They looked at FBS and said, "View can reverse engineer this." They broke the serum down. Amino acids, vitamins, hormones, salts, hundreds of components interacting in chaos. It was like trying to recreate a symphony by listening to it once. You need the exact notes in the exact order. One startup, Moza Meat, spent years testing thousands of combinations, just random trial and error. Too much insulin, the cells die. Not enough selenium, they stop growing. It was a molecular needle in a haystack. But slowly, the data points connected. They found a plant-based mix that worked. No cows required. In 2022, they announced it serum-free media. The holy grail. The press went wild again. Costs dropped by 98%. The ethical nightmare was over. The path to the supermarket seemed clear. They thought they had won the war. They had only won the first battle. Because solving the food source revealed a new, much physically larger problem. The tanks. You see, biology doesn't like to be big. In a body, every cell is closed to a capillary. In a 20,000-liter tank, the cells in the middle suffocate. They get crushed by their own weight. They drown in their own waste. To keep them alive, you have to stir the tank, but animal cells are fragile. If you stir too hard, you rip them apart. It's known as shear stress. It's the Goldilocks problem from hell. Pharma companies have solved this for making drugs, but they sell their product for $10,000 a gram. We are trying to sell ground beef for $5,000 a pound. We need pharma, grade tech at fast food prices. And this is where the physics of the future collided with the economics of today. A 2023 study blasted the industry. It claimed that at current tech levels, lab-grown meat isn't cleaner. Because running these massive, sterile, climate-controlled bioreactors burns an insane amount of energy. It's the energy paradox. We removed the animal to save the planet, but replaced it with a power plant. Critics started calling it vaporware. The stock prices of public food, tech companies crashed. Was it all a scam? A way to extract billions from Silicon Valley billionaires? Not quite. The tech worked, but the math didn't. To replace the cow, we had to stop trying to be the cow. Startups pivoted hard. They realized they didn't need to grow a whole steak, they just needed the fat. Fat is flavor. Fat is what makes a burger taste like a burger. And luckily, fat is easier to grow than muscle. But even with just fat, the thermodynamic wall remained. The energy cost was still too high for mass market. By 2023, funding dried up. Major players laid off staff. The media declared the lab meat bubble had finally burst. It looked like the end. Just another cool idea that died because it couldn't pay the electric bill. But in the shadows, a new strategy emerged. If you can't beat nature, cheat. Don't sell 100% lab meat. Sell a hybrid, plant-based structure infused with lab-grown animal fat. It's the Trojan horse strategy. Get the product on shelves at an affordable price, and scale the biology slowly. This solved the cost problem, but it didn't solve the biggest challenge of all, the texture. You see, a cow isn't just a pile of cells. It's architecture. Connective tissue, blood vessels, aligned fibers. If you just grow muscle cells in a tank, you don't get a steak. You get sludge, pink salty paste, fine for a nugget, useless for a ribeye. To build a steak, you need scaffolding. Scientists needed a microscopic trellis for the cells to latch onto. Something edible, tasteless, and safe. They tried everything. Algae, mushroom roots, even spinach leaves. By stripping the plant cells off a spinach leaf, you're left with a perfect vascular network. Seed it with cow cells, and they grow along the veins. A plant skeleton wearing an animal costume. But growing it is only half the battle. Muscles need one more thing to become meat. They need exercise. You don't get big muscles by laying in bed. Neither does a lab-grown steak. It needs to work out. So, scientists electrocute the meat. Small pulses that force the tissue to contract and relax. They are literally training the steak in a gym made of glass and electricity. It builds density. Without this, the meat is mushy. With it, you get that satisfying chew of a real cut. But there was still one final frontier. The uncanny valley of taste. Lab meat is pure. Too pure. Real meat tastes like what the animal ate. Grass, corn, wild herbs. In a lab, the cells eat a standardized nutrient soup. The result? It tasted sterile. To fix this, companies are now fermenting specific fat profiles, customizing the flavor. Want a duck breast that tastes like it ate only walnuts? Dial it in. Want a low cholesterol pork belly? Done. This is the iPhone moment for meat. We aren't just replicating nature, we are upgrading it. It sounds like science fiction. But while you were watching this video, the regulators made their move. For years, the FDA said maybe. Then, suddenly, they said ice.
Upside Foods and Good Meat got the green light. The US became only the second country on Earth to legalize it. This wasn't a test. This was a commercial launch. It immediately went onto the menu at Michelin-star restaurants. I checked the reviews. The critics didn't say it was good for lab meat. They said it was just chicken. But the most mind-blowing part isn't the restaurant. It's the factory they are building to supply it. Imagine a brewery. But instead of beer tanks, it's meat tanks. Rows of cultivators, 2 stories high. Upside's new facility aims to produce millions of pounds per year. They are moving from the Petri dish to the pipeline. And here is the crazy part. They are beginning to use 3D printers to assemble the final cuts. Printing food. We are entering the Star Trek era of replicator technology. With printing, you can program the marbling. You can dictate exactly how much fat is in every bite. This allows for something impossible in nature: healthy red meat. Steak with the omega-3 profile of salmon, or Wagyu beef that costs the same as a Big Mac. The scarcity of luxury food disappears. This is the promise of abundance. But every revolution has a dark side. If we can print meat, who owns the code? Can a company copyright the genetic sequence of a pork chop? And what happens to the farmers? There are millions of people whose livelihood depends on the old way. We aren't just disrupting a market. We are disrupting a 10,000-year-old relationship between man and beast. But the biggest shock, it might not be the farmers who stop this. It might be the culture wars. States like Florida and Italy have already moved to ban lab-grown meat. Not because it's unsafe, but because it's unnatural. The science is ready. The factories are building. But the battle for your dinner plate has just moved from the lab to the ballot box. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all, the one nobody wants to answer. If the meat is grown from cells, and we can grow any cells, where do we draw the line? Technically, we aren't limited to cows. We can grow anything. Tiger steaks, panda nuggets, snow leopard burgers. There is a startup right now working on mammoth meatballs, using DNA from extinct animals to feed the present. But the slippery slope goes further. If you can biopsy any animal, you could technically biopsy a human. Celebrity steaks. Eating a burger grown from your own cells. It is biologically possible. But society calls it cannibalism. While that's unlikely to happen, there is a real fear that is much more grounded. The fear of Franken meat. Critics point out that immortal cell lines, cells that divide forever, share a trait with something else: cancer. Let's be clear. The science says these cells are safe. You cannot catch cancer from eating it. It's biologically impossible. But perception is reality. If the public believes it's weird science, the industry dies, just like GMOs. And then there's the control. Do we really want the patent rights to our food supply held by 3 Silicon Valley corporations? If they own the cells, they own the farm. The decentralization of food, the family farm, could be wiped out. To understand this loss, I spoke to a 4th-generation cattle rancher. Let's call him John. John told me he hates this tech. He sees it as an insult to the land. To him, cattle aren't just product, they are life. But last year, drought dried up his creek. Feed prices tripled. He had to sell half his herd just to survive. He looked at me and said something I didn't expect. I love this life. But I don't want my son to inherit this struggle. This is the paradox. The farmers who hate this technology might be the ones who need it most. Imagine a future where ranchers don't raise cows for slaughter, but for genetics. High-end stud farms for cell banks, smaller herds, higher quality, no industrial slaughter. The cowboy doesn't disappear, he evolves. Because at the end of the day, we aren't addicted to killing animals. We are addicted to the meat. If we can keep the tradition, but lose the suffering, that isn't the end of farming. It's the beginning of stewardship. The transition will be messy, it will be expensive. And yes, it will be weird. But the alternative is running out of planet. So, what does the next 10 years look like? It starts with the brewery era. Local production. Meat grown in the city where it's eaten, no shipping, no spoilage, no supply chains. Then comes precision fermentation, milk without cows, eggs without chickens, brewed like beer. By 2035, the animal might just be a software code. A digital file sent to a printer in your kitchen. And what happens to the land? The 80% of agriculture currently used for livestock. We could see the greatest rewilding in human history. The return of forests, the return of biodiversity. We could turn the carbon sink of the world back into a carbon sponge. For 10,000 years we bent nature to our will. We industrialized life itself. Maybe the next step isn't about controlling nature more. It's about needing nature less. This technology is flawed. It is late. It is expensive. But it is also our only lifeboat. The 330,000 burger was a stunt, but the $5 burger, that will be a revolution. And when it arrives, the question won't be, is it weird? The question will be, why did we do it the old way for so long? The blood problem is solved. The energy problem is next. We are watching history be written in a petri dish.
If you enjoy videos that go deeper than headlines, and actually explain how the world works, you're in the right place. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next breakdown. Hit like if this video helped you see something differently. And if you have a question or a topic you want explored next, drop it in the comments. Your curiosity drives this channel,